It's the 12th of August, 2017. Here's Double Wicket Maiden, the cricket news bulletin show on Bizz 99.9 FM Substitute Radio. I'm your presenter for today, Chukka Wilson. Here's what's been making news in the cricketing world. Ellyse Perry has said that it's time to celebrate women's cricket not as a secondary feature or supplement to men's cricket, but as a sport in its own right. And so it's time for us to move on from making shallow and superficial comparisons between the two versions of the sport. Men and women might be built differently, but that just means that the type and form of cricket that they play will be different, and so it's pointless and meaningless to either compare women's cricket to men's, or to compare women's cricket to some imaginary universal standard of how cricket ought to be played. It's time to step back and just appreciate the two sports for what they are. Fans have already been able to recognise and be entertained by women's cricket as a standalone product, and so it's time for administrators, coaches, commentators and advertisers to do the same thing. Perry has said, quote, "For women's sport in general, whether it be cricket, soccer or the AFL at home, it is about creating your own identity and product," end quote. The key for women's cricket to become its own independent sport will be if it can free itself from always being situated underneath and in comparison to the men's, which would prevent it from fully blossoming and developing as a sport, tournament and popular brand in its own right. Former Australian wicketkeeper Brad Haddin will become Australia's new fielding coach, replacing Greg Blewett, who resigned from the national team setup to take up a position in South Australia. Since retiring as a professional player back in 2015, Haddin has taken up assistant coaching positions in the New South Wales youth cricket system, as well as working alongside Ryan Harris as coach for the Australian A matches in Townsville in 2016. There is currently a transition process in place for the old and new fielding coaches. Both Blewett and Haddin are currently in Darwin working with the Australian squad in their training camp in preparation for the tour of Bangladesh later this month. When the camp is over, Blewett will travel down to South Australia, which will end his active duties with the Australian national team, while Haddin will remain with the Australian squad, meaning that the tour of Bangladesh will be his first experience in this new position. In a public statement, Haddin said, quote, "I am thrilled to get the opportunity to work with this young group of players. I grew up in an era of players like Andrew Symonds and Ricky Ponting, who gave Australian cricket a real identity in the standards of world-class fielding. They were the type of players who took it personally if the team wasn't fielding well, and that created a level for the rest of the group to aspire to," end quote. It is believed that Otis Gibson will be named as South Africa's new head coach, although that decision is yet to be finalised by Cricket South Africa, and Gibson still has coaching work to do in the UK with the England national team. Faf du Plessis, South Africa's captain, has revealed that Gibson was the first choice pick of the special panel created for selecting the new coach. Gibson is currently working with the English cricket team ahead of the Test series against the West Indies, and it's possible that some sort of compensation deal will have to be arranged between the two boards in order for him to leave his work without breaking the terms of his contract. This would mean that the Edgbaston Test will be the final game for Gibson in this role. There is already growing speculation about who might be named as the next bowling coach for England, with the names of Richard Johnson and Darren Gough being floated. And that's the news for this episode. This has been Double Wicket Maiden, the cricket news bulletin show for the 12th of August 2017. I'm Chukka Wilson, and you're listening to Bizz 99.9 FM Substitute Radio. Until the next cricket news bulletin, remember to cock your wrists, play with soft hands, and don't let your centre of gravity get off balance.